Doggies fans, all things Bulldogs. It's the podcast episode 24. Fair bits happen. Let's get straight to it. Tracy joins from the Cronulla Sharks effective immediately on a 3-year deal. He comes in a player swap for Michael Gabriel. We'll talk about that. Addin Fonua Blake favoured to join the Bulldogs in 2025. We are the favourites apparently. I don't know why we're the favourites. But the word Gus Gould is apparently why. Jerome Luai, apparently Wests are the favourites to get Jerome, and they could get him as soon as next year. In what Fox News is talking, or I saw it on Zero Tackle actually, a player swap. Yeah, it's on Fox News with Lachlan Galvin, another halfback, and David Clemmer for his third team in 3 years and fourth team in 5 or 6. So with the loss of Spencer Leniu and some of those youngsters that need to come in and do a job for Penrith, are they not ready yet? Time will tell. David Clemmer would be a great signing for them, I believe. Canterbury probably need him more, but in saying that, he left Canterbury, left us in a bit of a hole. I must say, not that we had a bit of hope when Foran and Sharon Woods joined, and we had Clemmer still there and Graham still there. But yeah, the cap was a mess, and the rest is history. Still burns. So we'll talk about all that, and we'll try and get some sense of the top 30 and what I think is going to happen. So there you go. With the top 30, there's players listed as in the development list that on other sites are in the top 30 list. Players that are there but are not there on other lists. So from the NRL official site to the Bulldogs site to the Fox News site, there's a whole bunch of different players. Now, Reece Hoffman's not listed on the Bulldogs team list, but I think it is managed by the NRL. So there you go. Tracy joins on a 3-year deal. Very, very good player. He's 27 years old. Tracy. Listed as a halfback on the NRL site. He's 6 foot, 87 kilos. He's played for Souths, a couple of games for Souths before joining the Sharks, and spent 4 years there and playing 66 games for 27 tries. 10 games last year are all pretty high quality. Scored some really good tries, lots of line break assists, that sort of thing. Average 177 metres as the fullback. He can play fullback, wing, centre, halfback, and 5'8". I'm sure he could do the job as a utility off the bench and play as a hooker if he had to. Winning percentage, 44% in his first year at the Sharks, 42 in his second year where he played the most matches, 24 games. Then 64% in 2022 and 60% in 2023. Consistent try assists. He's a good player, skillful player, former Australian schoolboy, another one to join the Bulldogs. So many of our players have played for the Australian schoolboys or for the Origin sides. That we've got some kids that are pretty talented. Played well in the game in August in 2023. And look, is he the answer? I don't know. Could he be a breakout? Let's hope so. But in a recent issue, he got injured at training for Cronulla. So he can't train at the moment, can't train with the squad, with the Bulldogs. And reported by Gus today, will be training come January, should be available for our trials. But obviously that means an interrupted pre-season for Tracy, so he's not going to hit the ground running. So for mine, if you haven't had that big pre-season, he might have to start again in the reserve competition and make his way through, but we will see. I rate him as a player. He's a very good player. He's got the acceleration, a little bit of sides, got the ball skills, control pass, really puts his head down for the try line, evasive player, powerful player. And, I could see him doing the job at fullback. Look, literally, I rate Blake Taft and Connor Tracy ahead of Stephen Crichton as a fullback right now. So, for this balance of our squad, I think Stephen Crichton must play centre. But we will see. We'll see what the future's going to hold. Anyway, Gabriel. Now, Michael Gabriel going to the Sharks, it's a bit of pill to swallow for people who've been taking an interest in the youngsters coming through. And he looks like someone that we invested in, who definitely has the speed and acceleration and the confidence, bit of size as well. That it looks like he's going to be a ready-made NRL first grader, and a good. I think this would have been something that he would have been wanting as well, simply because it appears that his pathway to first grade would be maybe longer via Canterbury at the moment. Our back line seems to be very clogged up, full of potential talent as well as experienced top 17 players and some top 13 players that just make that pathway harder. And he looks like a pretty confident kid. I wouldn't say cocky, but plays with that confidence on the field. I think it will suit the Sharks system, and I think his pathway will be pretty, know exactly what he's got to do there. Whereas at Canterbury, there's just so much more up in the air when it comes to the amount of depth we now have across the back line. I'm still, that marquee player short in our spine, whether it be the halfback, and still short of a couple of big props. Now, you'd think if you add Addin, Fonua, Blake to our club next year, that's really going to help in our pursuit. He gets injured, though, what happens? So we really need the likes of Chris Patalo or Samuel Hughes or Harrison Edwards to take those steps and really get their careers going. Fonua, who's just come to the club, we hope he does really well. Katoni Katoga. These players may have to step up and play front row. Now, Max King's one who'll be off contract. I don't think he's on huge money, Max. He's one we hope to go to that next rise, to that next level, and take us to the promised land this year. Max is a huge, important player for us this year. And his perseverance and resilience has been really, really strong with the injuries he's carried and the consistency in his performances. He dropped off a little bit, had a flat spot in the season, but still his flat spot was better than half the other forwards. But still, in a perfect world, Max King, at the level that he's at right now, is playing off the bench, and you've got two really good, strong forwards starting, and Max is coming off the bench to sort of add, to keep it going, sort of thing. But he actually has to take the mantle as our first hit-up guy, and it's not an easy thing to do. Ryan Sutton's another player like that. They can come on and really enhance what your big boys have done to start the match. But when they've got to do that from the start, it's tough. Liam Knight, another one. They all sort of fall into that category. But if they can have a great pre-season, get to as fit as they've ever been, get out there, show some confidence, utilise whatever training or skills or strategies they're being given, and really take it to the opposition forward packs and make a dent in them, who's to know how far they can go? Hopefully it's a situation where none of them have hit their potential and are just about to, because we really need it to happen. Addin Fonua Blake to that, fantastic. If we still had Tavita Pangai Jr. or Luke Thompson in the side, and you add Addin Fonua Blake to having one of those guys, then you're sort of like, oh, if one goes down, we've still got the other one. But I still think on his own, Addin Fonua Blake's not going to solve our problems. Now, Josh Curran, though, is a very good acquisition for our forward pack. Still, he's not massive. He plays massive, though. So, look, we need Addin Fonua Blake. I think he's sort of be about 30 by then, which is pretty, it's not young for a prop, but they are playing longer these days, especially when there's money to be made and the advancements in training and all that sort of stuff that's been done. So Addin Fonua Blake, hopefully will be coming to the Dogs. Apparently we're the front runners. Gus Gould, without Gus Gould, I couldn't see us getting a lot of these players. Unless we're going to bring someone to the club who is more influential. Who is that person? I don't know. Still mystified by look. If I looked at our depth in our back line last year and our depth in our back line in 2024, we've come ahead in leaps and bounds, and that's even losing Jake Gabriel. I don't believe we needed to lose Jake to even. For me, there's been some like for like there, and I've got a feeling that we'll see just how much we're going to miss Jake Averillo this year. But Connor Tracy's a player who can score long-range tries, so is Blake Taff. We've got the Fox there, and hopefully Bronson Cherry, we're giving him an opportunity to break into open space and use that acceleration and power. There's lots to get excited about. There's lots to lots to play out, and we have to see. But it's just confusing. Look, I think we could literally name 4 back lines with different halves, different fullbacks, different centres. Change one of the wingers, and they would all be very, very competitive with each other. But to me, it's our forward pack. Our back row is probably one of the best back rows in the competition. When you look at with Jacob Preston, what you expect from him. Now, look, I don't even expect him to go to another level. I think his level is fantastic. I think Josh Curran can go to a higher level, and I think that Viliame Kikau, if he plays close to his best level, that is an outstanding back row. It's just those two bookends in the middle, the 2 big boys. It's just so imperative that they're able to do the job for us, because as soon as our back row has to do more work than it's needed, as soon as they start losing trust in the middle, that's when it all falls apart. When one player starts rushing up and one overplays their hand, one covers it too far in and then can't get back across, we've seen it. The gaps start to open up. And as soon as they start, huffing and puffing, these big boys, they just get ripped apart when the pressure comes on, and then it just puts pressure on everyone. And all of a sudden, you're behind by 12 points out of nothing, and you starved of possession, and your backs are tackling too much, your halves are tackling too much, and your centres and your wingers start losing trust in each other. Like, we just see it. I've just seen it so often. But when you see them play well and you see them win, and you see when they've got things under control, when they're holding up in the middle, well, it's such a simple game. They manage those things out wide quite easily. It's just the connectivity. So having the connectivity between the likes of these ex-Penrith players and players that have played together for a couple of years now, that's what we need, and we need to build on that. I'm truly hoping that the acquisitions for next year are 2 or 3 players, and then the upgrade of 3 or 4 players from the youngsters, from that development list into the top 30. That would be ideal next year, to see 6 or 7 changes to our top 30, not 10, 12 or 13. We can't keep turning over 30 players every 2 years. But with the depth that's there and the competition for spots that's there, it does pave the way for us to, improve our position on the ladder and make it more attractive to say, look at the quality and competition of play you've got in this back line if you can come to our club. So Fonua Blake, if he sees that he's coming to a club where he's got that brilliant back line that are going to take advantage of his work ethic, that's what's going to do it. So how does Jerome Luai fit into all this? Jerome Luai. Jerome Luai is a very gifted player, has a massive step, has an ego, obviously, has a persona, which isn't liked by some or many. And he can kick. He's got a short kicking game. He's got a long kicking game. He can be trusted to. He's not what you would call a great managing halfback, but he can do it. But he plays on the left, and so does Bird. If Jerome Luai is coming to Canterbury, I think it's because I'd look at his acquisition in a similar way to a James Maloney, where Penrith got Maloney in there to mentor a player like Ivan Cleary. Now, if Luai comes in, he'll be mentoring quite a few young halves, but I think the one that they're really going all in on is Mitchell Woods, who's committed to the Bulldogs, which is another good news story out of last week, which I didn't write down there. He's said no to the Sydney Swans. I've watched highlights of this kid play for the Swans, play for New South Wales Waratahs, and for the Bulldogs, and watched him for games for the Bulldogs. And what a great talent. Kicking game really good. Plays with his crafty. Now, Gus Gould has come out and said that he was asked, Gus, who's this kid? If you had to name a player that he reminded you of, who would you say? And he sort of thought about it and said, he reminds him of a young Steve Mortimer. Remembering Turvey played in an era where the halfback didn't play in the front line, which Gus talked about as well, but we all knew that. He was a cover defender. He could put a bomb on the spot and put a chip over the top. Very fast off the mark. Would just sit there and grind teams down and keep. I remember in the 1985 grand final against the Dragons, I think he put up about 40 bombs that were caught on the full by the Dragons, but the rules at that time meant that they had to do a dropout every time, even though they caught it on the full. So those things have changed in today's game. There was a 5 metre rule back then as well. It's just a different game. So does a young Steve Mortimer make it in the way the game's played these days? I think if the goalpost changed for him, I think he still would have been a great player, like most of them would have, because these players have a lot of things in common. They're not just good at rugby league, they're good at soccer, they're good at AFL if they try, they're good at cricket. There's no sport they're really not good at. And some of them are really good academically as well, believe it or not. Especially some of the halves. But Not so much of the forwards. There are some. Corey Payne was quite intelligent, apparently. He played for the Bulldogs. But I better not go there too much, eh? Better just quit while I'm behind. So, look, if Jerome Luai is coming, I think they need to have that experienced winner who's been and done it all at all levels and been successful. He's still relatively young. He could still play for another 8 or 9 years, Jerome Luai. And, you know, can he lead a team around? Can he do all these things? I think they believe he can. If he's coming to the Bulldogs, does he go to number 7 and Burton plays 6? I've got a feeling if Jerome Luai, if they know they're going to get him and they're planning on him coming in 2025 or even earlier, which I don't see that happening, I think you'll find Burton may move out into the centres, which I don't want to see happen. I believe a player of his ability, people say he can't kick, he's got no short kicking game and stuff. Yeah, he failed with some of his short kicks in the second half of that season. Put a whole heap in grubbers they went into 7 tackle sets, stuff like that. Doesn't mean he doesn't have a short kicking game. He still got repeat sets. He's still putting short grubbers for tries for the Fox. You know, they can all do it. It's just about the consistent execution. Now, when you're doing more tackling, when you're more busted, when you've got more responsibilities, you make more mistakes. Anyway, we talk about this sort of stuff all day. As my seat falls down a little bit, don't blame it with me sitting on it. But yeah, I think if the plan to get Luai is now, it may have something to do with the move to centre. I think the move to centre has been more talked about on the News Corp side of things. And when that's the case, it's just people I think Dave Riccio was the first one talking about it. I'm not sure if it was a Channel 9 thing, but obviously some of them have asked questions. I think Darcy from News Corp, who was also a Bulldogs cheerleader and fan, I'm pretty sure she was asking a lot of questions about Matty Burton, and he unequivocally said that he wants to play 5'8". He'll do whatever he can for the team, but he sees himself as a 5'8". He said that Sexton is the guy he feels he's making combinations with. I think those two will be the halves to start. But as I said, if the plan's to get Jerome Luai, is it going to be Luai and Burton? 2 left footers. Haven't seen too many halves combinations where both of them are left footers. It's good to have a left and a right if you can. And both have historically played on the left-hand side of the field. So who's going to play on the right-hand side? So it doesn't make sense. If the long-term plan is Mitchell Woods, who's only going to be playing SG ball this year, and I think he might be turning 18 this year. He's 16, 17. He's 16 or 17, and he'll be turning 17 or turning 18. If that's the case, we may see Mitchell Woods in Jersey Flegg this year as well. So we'll see how that SG ball goes. See where the Harold Matthews champions can take the next step and bring the SG ball trophy home. A lot of them will move into that grade. And a lot of those will also then go on to play Ron Massey Cup and play Jersey Flegg down the track. But yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how that pans out. I can't see Mitchell Woods playing back in first grade for at least 2 years, but who knows? But what you want is you either allow a player like Toby Sexton to continue to develop. Now Gus has brought the academy, so we've got a bunch of young halves. They're building the halfback academy for all these aspiring halves to, just hone their halfback skills and become long-term NRL prospects for the game, not just for Canterbury. And if those players are going to do well, they need to be the best of the best. So now Gus said that the problem with a lot of halfbacks is a lot of them get turned into hookers or utilities, aren't given a chance to to hone their trade, and it's a longer pathway to become a great halfback. But at the same time, you see so much turnover in halfbacks. So I look at Kyle Flanagan, was turned into a hooker. Now, Gus said he's always seen him as a hooker. Maybe so, and I'm sure Kyle he said he was grateful to Cameron Serrato for reinvigorating his career. It is a tad hypocritical that you've got a halfback there who played about 60, 70 games of first grade in a team where the forwards were going backwards. We all know the story. Maybe in 2 or 3 seasons as a halfback, he would develop into a player the quality of a Chad Townsend or something like that, who would be able to, win a premiership with the team. Be good enough to do the job well enough for that to happen. Shane Perry won a premiership. He played for the Bulldogs. Won a premiership with the Broncos in 2006, I think, or 2000. Playing halfback or 5'8". Amazing. We look at Jack Cogger, grand final hero, in my opinion. Was at the Bulldogs. Was let go. Was hooked numerous times. Saw him in 2019 against the Gold Coast. He played an absolute blinder that. Helped us win the game. Him and Forum were starting to develop. Then I think they played a game. He missed a tackle and he was dropped. It's like, just don't let them just do not let these players develop. Get him in a good system, give him some experience, get some confidence, and look what happens. So Gus has talked a lot about that. Now the proof's in the pudding. Are we going to see it pan out? Obviously, Mitchell Woods is a couple of years away, but funnier things have happened. I think they want to get Jerome Luai, and I think if Gus wants him enough, I think he'll get him. I don't think he'll pay as much for Jerome as what West will pay. Jerome apparently isn't motivated by money. But sometimes if you're not motivated by money, you've got less to worry about. How do I say it? He might just ask for more because he can. Who knows? I just don't see Jerome Luai and Matt Burton as a halves pairing working out. Hopefully, that if that happens, that would be quite a lot of talent there. They're very familiar with each other. That you'd have the connectivity, and the more and more players we get playing together in games under their belt, the better. Which is why I think Sexton and Burton in the halves is what we need to do. Planning for right now, and then hopefully starting to have some wins and looking good. And if they're doing the job, but I think the plan will be to get that experienced champion half or 5'8" that can use to mentor these kids coming through. And he's the type of player with the confidence. And Penrith talk about how important he is to their culture, which is very, very interesting. So there you go. I think he'll end up at the Bulldogs. If that's the case, I think Matty Burton may move him to centre and start to plan for that. But who knows? It's all up in the air. Looking at our team for Harrison Edwards, so he's got the development role. I think, vacated by Michael Gabriel. He may have already had it, I'm not sure, but Gus said he's on the development list. He's still not listed anywhere as being on a development list or anything like that. So I think that's maybe what may have happened, but who knows? And good luck to him. I think Harrison, he'll put on a bit more size. I think we'll see a lot more from Harrison Edwards this year. I really do. I think he would force his way into that team pretty quickly, if not from straight away. I think he's got a bit of class about him. I like the way he passes the ball. He's got a good step at the line. And when he gets his fitness going and when he's got his stamina going, he works long and hard. So I think he's a type of player that they like and want to see do really well at the Bulldogs. But we will see. We will see. He might be a player who really shines this year, who then, if we're to get an Addin Fonua Blake, he might be one we have to let go of. It's going to come down to that. There's going to be a bunch of players which are on smaller contracts, financially and length, that will find themselves moving on again next year if we are to get those big fish, because they're bringing the big fish and then upgrade some players. The good thing, though, is that a lot of these utilities and stuff aren't on much money. Like, you wouldn't think that Tracy or Salmon or Taff or Kurtman or Hutchinson are on. I don't think any of them would be on 300 grand. Turpin the same. I think they're all on 200 grand or less, 250 max. So from that point of view, easy to manipulate, easy to move on. You got to pay a little bit of their contract. It's not a huge deal, and it's only a short-term thing. But speaking about our salary cap, from my calculations, we've had over $6 million of cap that we were paying or would have been paying in 2023 that we're not paying in 2024. That's before the signings and the extensions happen and the upgrades happen. So the 10 players that have come in that I count would only add up to not even $5 million. So basically, from what I'm adding up, you've got over $1 million there to get yourself an Addin Fonua Blake if you need him right now. And there may be a situation where they actually have to front load the contracts for next year. So there you go. So some good news. Connor Tracy's going to bring added depth. I think we've got much better depth in our top 30 as far as our backline goes. There's a long tail, and no disrespect, but I'm looking at our top 30 last year. There were players that were never going to play or shouldn't have been playing NRL and were never going to play. That were in our top 30. I think there's going to be less and less of those players as part of our top 30 as we move on. And the very fact that there's players in our that are on development contracts for this year or next year, 2024, that have already played a bit of first grade or a fair bit of first grade in the likes of Curtis Moran and Harrison Edwards, they're on development contracts and played a heap of first grade, like 10 or 20 games each. That's a good sign for our depth, don't you think? That's a real good sign for our depth. And then you've got the likes of Sam Hughes and Bartolo. So, look, it's a skinny forward pack. I'll give it that. But there's a lot more depth in our top 30 as a whole. More experience in our top 30 as a whole. But still light on in forwards. We get a couple of big boppers in, everything changes. I'd like to think that David Clement could come back to the Bulldogs. That would be nice. I think he could. It could be some unfinished business there for him. But 2015 was 8 years ago when he got sent off in that game against Souths with James Graham. He took out Adam Reynolds' legs trying to save the game. a game that the refs were absolutely horrible in. To even have Souths in a winning position was all referee orientated. I've just gone off the things that burn. Anyway, guys, that's me for tonight. Thanks for listening in. We'll chat soon. I think I've got a Drew Hutchinson player watch. Probably do another one. Do one on Connor Tracy. Stephen Crichton will be coming up soon. Might look at Blake Wilson as well, and Blake Taff, of course. Then we've got Bronson Cherry. So I'm going to do a whole heap. I enjoy doing them. Where I just focus on the one player and really watch their recordings and learn as much as I can about them, and just give my little 2 bucks worth on it. All right. Have a good night, everyone, and a good week. Christmas is coming, and I'll speak to you soon. Go the Dogs.